Y'all, I got a busy day of work ahead of me, so we're going to do a little update on the Black Sheep. Did a video on it talking about how we had to order some parts, got some parts ordered up. Shout out to RBS Superchargers. Have to overnight.
Sorry, I didn't think that'd make noise.
Have to overnight some more stuff because obviously you can only do so much guessing and get it right. Not saying that we got some stuff wrong, but we do have to order some additional parts. So this is what we got going on. We made some good progress. We had all this sealed up just because it's not good to have the engine just chill and open. But if you look at it, you'll notice we have a belt on it. We ordered another belt. That doesn't fit. They really make these belts in like 2 or 3 sizes. But this one here is just a hair too loose, and we need to order the longer, I guess, adjustment arm right here, and then that should get us exactly where we need to be with our belt tension. I know I've seen a lot of comments. People are like, hey, you're putting the pulley on the wrong side, and if this was like for instance, an LSA supercharger or a whipple like kit for your 5th gen Camaro or a ZR1, you would be correct. But it specifically says on these belts, you tension them from the inside. It says do not tension from the outside. I know it's kind of hard to grasp when you got a 550 horsepower ZL1, but this is slightly different. If you notice, the belt looks a little bit different than what you have, and it's a little bit wider than what you have, and it just might make a little bit more horsepower than you got. So they do things a little bit differently. Is that fair to say?
I don't think you had to beat on that already.
I've seen multiple comments. They're like, even at PRI, people are like, oh man, they got the pulley on the wrong side. And I'm like, listen, if we got this far, you really think we got the pulley on the wrong side? Now, don't get me wrong, everyone makes mistakes and stuff like that, so that's always a possibility. But if you read the instructions, it will tell you. We have a couple different pulley sizes. We got the smaller pulley on it right now. The max we can overdrive this blower is like 75%. And you got to factor it at 10,000 RPMs because that's where you'll shift this guy at. I know 521 or 526 cubic inches at 10,000 RPMs is terrifying, but I'm here for it. So we got it right now, overdriven 60%. We have a pulley right there. It'll get us 10 more percent, get us to 70%, and then we'd have another 5% to go. But for shaking the car down, I think going 60% overdriven will be plenty. It's a larger starting point than where we were at on the last motor, and when we went from a roots blower to this whipple, it was insane change. So I think that this would be a good place to start. Thoughts?
I agree.
What else have we done? We got the push rods in one side of the motor, and we have found out that we might have the wrong push rods. The push rods that came with it look brand new, like they were never run, and they are a hair too short. For those of you guys that know stuff about engines and push rods and all of that stuff, this is the shorter push rod. It's 11.225. That's a huge push rod. A LS push rod is like a 7/400. So look at the size of this. Also, you could beat the shit out of someone with this. The long ones are 11.4/750. So they are even longer. The reason why it's important to get the correct, I know, it's got adjustable rocker arms. That is true, but this is how these bad boys oil. So the push rod doesn't. So that's cool, right? Normal LS, the push rod's got a hole through it and it oils like that. These don't. Also, it doesn't have the ball on the push rod. It's got the cup on the push rod. So we're in a different realm here. These are oil squirters that go onto the coil springs, and then it oils through actually the shaft in the rocker. So you have oil that goes through there, and it comes down, and there's like a little, very similar to the T&D stuff, which on the LS oil the same way. Instead of splash oil, and it oils through the rocker arm, and there's a hole. And the adjuster on the rocker arm has a groove cut in it. So if you over tighten it and you go past it, you essentially deadhead the oil and you'll start burning up push rods. It needs to have good lubrication. You have to have your adjuster in the right spot, because if you have a hole like right in the center of there and it's got a groove in the adjuster and you go past it where it's just threads, you've now deadheaded, and now you cannot lubricate your push rod, burning push rods up. It's kind of like a common thing in the Hemis. You keep some spare push rods, keep some spare adjusters, probably keep a couple spare rocker arms. I mean, the rocker arm set on this is high dollar and something that hopefully we don't have to replace a lot, because that would definitely hurt the pocketbook, that's for sure. But it's got a couple different, see here, you got the oil fitting right here for the oil squirter, and yeah, I mean, that's very important to have proper oiling to the top end of the motor. Speaking of oiling, we got our oil filter on there. We picked this up from Proline. You guys heard us talking about it in the last video. Harry came and welded this tab on. Kind of a bummer, because I bought this tab with it too for like another 80 bucks. This was really nice, but we didn't use it. So now it looks like I need to buy another Peterson oil filter housing so I could use this on the next one. That's the way my mind works. So we're not using that. We just kept it simple, welded one tab on there. The reason why I went with this oil filter housing opposed to just like the standard Moroso or a Clearview is I wanted to run a System 1, which I know you guys can run a System 1 on a Clearview, but this has a nice prime feature on it. So what we'll do is today, and probably in tomorrow's video, you'll see it. I'm going to put the car up in the air. I'm going to drop the pan. I'm going to put a bung in the pan and run a line from the pan up to the oil filter housing. The oil filter housing is set up to prime the motor. So before we start the car, probably put the oil pan heater on it, get some heat in the oil, make sure it's all jiving. We're going to run straight 50 weight in this guy. You will stick a socket on here with a drill, not an impact. It says don't use an impact on this Peterson filter housing. And you will turn that bad boy on, and you will just start pumping oil through the motor. So for those of you guys that have like a external wet sump or a dry sump that has a oil pump outside of the motor, you can slip the belt off, put a different belt, and put a pulley on a drill and do it the same way. But on this, it uses that internal style. I guess it's external, but it's driven off the cam sync, or the drive shaft that the cam sync is on. So the only way you can actually prime the motor is by turning the motor over, which I've primed like all my LS stuff. I would never really prime it, but it was never really like super, it wasn't prone to having burning up push rod issues or oiling issues like that. If anything, it had like over oiling issues where we had to really focus on drain back and running oil restrictors. That's why I went with the Peterson filter housing, the System 175 micron filter. We're running Schaefer's straight 50 weight oil. That's what Proline says to run in the 481X. That's what we're going to run in this. They run it in their Hemi in the 481X stuff. Very similar. The motors are very similar, different like cylinder head, but pretty much similar bottom end. So then we're going to run some fittings from the pump to the filter housing back to the pump, because obviously this makes a loop. We're going to get a cap for that. Just trying to get as much stuff done before it goes to Devin. Yes, Devin can plumb it. Yes, it's going to Matt at Performance Fab, so if he had to put a bung in the pan, he can, but I can do that, so I might as well just try to make it as cost-effective with them and as timely with them as possible. Try to make their life as easy as possible. So we got that situated. We got the blower back on there. The intake is bolted down. Now this is something that's kind of crazy and gonna be wild. If you notice, we have just grease on everything. So you got dissimilar metals. You have aluminum cylinder heads. You got a magnesium blower. You got an aluminum setback plate, a magnesium blower. So the dissimilar metals. The dissimilar metals attract moisture, and moisture on magnesium causes immense corrosion. The outside of the blower, you can see a little bit on it, right? Like this is the corrosion. The outside of the blower, not so bad, because you can spray it down with stuff. Like you can just hose it down with WD-40. The inside of the blower, you have to put what they call blower jelly in there. So after you're done running the car for the day, you crank it up and you just start squirting this shit down the damn intake, and it lubricates the sides of the blower. Some guys will run gasoline down it, but that methanol has a ton of moisture in it, so that can cause some problems. The lower manifold, the inside, kind of similar deal, but the mounting surfaces where it will attract moisture is where you're going to have problems. So they said, lather that shit up with some grease. So we got some grease, and we just put a nice thin layer over it and just set everything down on it. You can do that on something like this because the heads are O-ringed. Everything's O-ringed. It's not like, I would say just use RTV, but you don't need to use RTV. That grease is just going to make a nice insulated barrier between the two dissimilar metals and hopefully prevent against as much corrosion as possible. So if you can't tell, we're trying to take all the right steps and do it right to make this, I guess, as enjoyable as a process of running this car, because these Hemis are maintenance monsters. So if we can try to make it where, hey, we ain't got to pull the intake off because it's corroding into 4 pieces, that would be a bonus. Let's see, our list. We got our blower guard stuff, which we have to get our blower belt and everything and our tension set correctly before we start messing with that. We are Loctite blower pulley bolts. We haven't done that yet. Install oil pan heater. I'm going to be doing that today. Install push rods and rocker arms. Add oil and install fittings for the O-rings. I do have to order all the fittings. I forgot to order all the O-rings for the fittings from Brown & Miller, so I got to call them today. Also, I need to get tracking on where our pump fitting is. And other than that, like, we can really start throwing it together. So my goal, which you guys will see in tomorrow's video, is just trying to get all the plumbing done. Put most of that back on it. I could probably put the lid back on it, and can't put the valve covers back on it because we're having that issue. We might have to order longer push rods. We might not. We're going to call maintenance, see how much adjustment they have, because each, the T&D, I'm pretty sure, is like any more than 2.5 from the top, you're going to run into some issues. So we want to make sure that's right, and then we're going to get everything ready to go over to Devin at HR Innovations and Matt at Performance Fabrication. So what they're going to be doing over there is Performance Fab is going to be putting a new firewall in the car. It is factory firewall, factory location, but as you can see, it's been cut up, so we're just going to replace some of the stuff. We're going to move the brake master cylinder to the ground, and I think other than that, moving the fuel tank back and running a bar around the front, and I think other than that, it should be hopefully a quick, small little punch list. And I think the chassis guys, I can't speak for them, but I feel like they like the little stuff better than the big project, solely for the fact that they can get it in, knock it out, and it's not, they're coming and working on this every day. It's something new, something fresh, and trying to make it as enjoyable as possible for everyone working on it. So that's what we got going on. The black sheep build's underway. This is going to Devin's this week, so kind of on the home stretch, getting this wrapped up. There's a whole nother process that we have to do with the doors once we get the car back. We're going to have to do some custom fiberglass on the doors, but we'll reach that hurdle when we get there. So first we got to get the car done and running, and hopefully other than wiring it up and the little stuff we named off at Performance Fabrication, not too much to do. So that's going to wrap it up. There's your update on the black sheep. Almost done. Hopefully in tomorrow's video I can get all that stuff knocked out, get the blower lid on there, start putting some of the hoses and plumbing stuff on there, and rock and roll.